This topic I allowed him up because it's something that I'm kind of an expert into, something to do with transitioning. Even me, I've transitioned many times. Just less than 2 years ago, almost 1.5 years ago, I stopped full-time employment completely, 1000%. It's not something that I want to do again or I'm planning to do. I've decided to remain an independent worker from now until further notice. And I've had several transitions. This is not just the first transition, I've had a number of transitions. So I'll be sharing a few things and maybe you can learn from it. Yeah, so the first thing is looking at work and change. I'm not going to just be talking about me as a person. I will also be looking at transitioning as an art, as a science. Of course, I'll be chipping in a few things that I've used as an individual, but I'm going to be looking at it overall. So first of all, if you go online, this is the definition of what a career is. And in its definition, whether on Wikipedia or Google, you find that there's a lot of change terminology. So for example, it says it's the individual's evolutionary and revolutionary journey or story through learning and work. So the word evolution means to change over a given period of time or a long period of time. And revolution means to change suddenly. So it's shorter but big. So if like the Kenyan people right now change government in a night, we would call it a revolution. If the president takes his time and changes hands over, it will be an evolution. So those are the definitions. So which means by design, every person's career should have change. If you have no change, it means you have no career. That's the definition of career. Another definition, I think this is from the dictionary, it's an occupation undertaken for a significant period, which also has time of a person's life, and it has opportunities for progress. So the moment you see the word progress, time, period, you expect change. So you have to be ready for change. Most of the people who are frustrated with their work are people who never experience change. You work for 40 years, they give you your allowance, your pension, then you sign out. Most of those people, if you have a conversation with them, me, I've had some conversations with them, they are not going to be happy. So there has to be change in one way or another. And change, it can be an evolution or a revolution. An example is you can move from one department to another, you can move from one position to another, that is small change. Or you can move from full-time employment to freelancing, now that is a revolution. It just happens and it switches everything. So as I'm speaking, you'll be reflecting on your own self. So I borrowed this quote from a gentleman called Miles Monroe. He's very good with things to do with change. I've learned a lot from him. And he states that the only stability or security you have is change. Change is constant. So the iPhones are changing, cars are changing, forms of work are changing, everything is changing. So the only constant is change. So whether you want it or not, change for it, it will happen. For those of you who studied some CRE in high school, you remember they said if you don't want to change, then it will change you. So I'm just building preamble for transition. And the only guarantee you have in life is transition. So whether you want it or not, there's going to be a transition. You move from primary to secondary, to university, to internship, to whatever. You marry, you will have children, there's going to be transition and change. And even if you choose not to change, change will change you automatically. They will push you, they will move you for the sake of change. So going back slightly, there's a key word here, learning and working. So when it comes to career, it's about learning and working. So the change is with these two, whether you know it or you don't. So every time you learn something, you increase on your knowledge, your skills, your books, you upgrade, you get another degree or you get another skill. That skill primarily it's going to cause change in you through learning. So they call it metamorphosis. The more you learn new things, the more you metamorphose. Metamorphosis simply means egg, larva, pupa, adult, switching levels. So if you keep on taking in knowledge, experience, content, exposure, connection, that learning automatically it has to change you. So you'll find maybe you are now an adult butterfly and you feel where you are, there are only eggs or there are only larvae. You can't fit in whether you want it or not. So you have to change and look for other butterflies. And this happens through learning, metamorphosis. It's automatic. So sometimes people don't like their work, no matter how much money they are paying them. But it's because you change. Maybe you learned something or you got exposed to something, and all of a sudden you feel like I need to switch the way I operate. And your CV, me personally, have like over 15 versions of my profile that I've had. The moment I feel I've switched or I've changed, I remove it. There was a time where my profile was just software engineer, full stop. Then I started teaching in coding boot camps. I became technical learning facilitator. Then I started, so the more knowledge, the more exposure you get, you keep on switching, and you don't have to worry about it. It's normal, it's perfect, it's actually shows that there's growth, there's advancement, there's something is happening. Then number three, work and change, learning and metamorphosis. So this cycle is quite new. This is the cycle from Forbes magazine, Forbes rather. They were looking at how people's cycle is going to be. This was 3 years ago. I think now this is the standard. So, for example, they were showing that let's say everyone starts by exploring. Exploring is the foundation of all work. You have to explore. There's something at IBM, they call it explore, color, innovate. So at IBM, they believe that when you are exploring, let's say you are reading books, watching videos, studying courses, you will reach a level where you will develop skill and you can do a job, what we call collar, where we have blue collar, white collar, green collar, it doesn't matter the collar. But there's also where you explore and you start innovating. So innovation comes from exploring and collaring comes from exploring. Or for them, they believe that you should study too much, learn too much, research too much, explore too much, connect dots until you know what to do. That's what they call collar. Or you explore too much, learn too much, study too much until you innovate. I think that's what we call research and development. So all the students who go through the IBM Academy, they give you material on AI, what you study, and then as you connect dots, they ask you, do you want to innovate or do you want to collar? For us, we don't have such things in our schools and universities, so you have no option. You just finish school and go and look for a job. Um, anyway, so but this is like a blend of all cycles that people have studied. So they believe you can learn and explore, then you work. But even when you are working in that working environment, it should also have a learning environment so that you learn by doing. Then they believe that you should be open to transition. I think you see transition here. So this is where most people fear, and they fear transition maybe because of finances, because of uncertainty. They are not sure what is going to happen if their paycheck stops and stuff like that. But the modern way, you will definitely transition because the way things are changing. If you have your job in 2 years from now, I assure you, you will need to transition a thing. Either you will transition, or your skills will transition, or your mindset will transition, but you have to transition. And then when you transition, you mix it with these two, you learn and explore at the same time. Then you go back to working and learning. Now, this is for employment. They believe that at one stage, you have to switch into a portfolio career or side gig. This is freelancing. So the Forbes people, in their prediction, they believe that, let's say if someone is employed, they are going to go to school, learn and explore, work and learn, maybe transition into a management role, explore and learn in that management role, learn and work. And the next step, according to Forbes, a big percentage, they will have to either have a side gig or move into a portfolio career, which portfolio career is just another word for freelancing. So this is the cycle that they predicted, and I believe in it 100%, because most of these people are going to be comfortable, and they believe maybe getting a management role is going to bring in more money. But then they start finding that's not the case. Even if they give you more money, even your expenses increase. So most people will, it's already happening. Like me personally, it's how I did it. You start having a side gig until you transition into a portfolio career. And when you do that, the same cycle continues. And you can maybe move into entrepreneurship and stuff like that. Let me first move through some of this information, then I can share what I want to share. Then so let's see, 1, 2, no, 2, 3, 4. Number 4, in the transition, also aspect of a journey, and this aspect is it will lead to the next thing I want to talk about. So there is something called, you can Google it and look out for it. It's called concurrent and consecutive work, or concurrent and consecutive careers. You can Google it if you want. These are types of career journeys, and concurrent is the ability to do multiple forms of work at the same time. So, for example, it's what we call the forward slash. On LinkedIn, they call it the forward slash. It's very much common in the creative spaces and even technologists. So you use a forward slash. You say, my name is Simon. I am a business administrator, forward slash artist, forward slash entrepreneur. I am an investor, forward slash entrepreneur, forward slash philanthropist. Billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. It's called a forward slash. So you say, my name is ABC, I'm the CEO of this, I'm the president of this, and the company director of this. That's called concurrent. Then there's consecutive, where you can be maybe you were a musician, you became an MP, and now you are standing for president. That's called consecutive. You were a soldier, then you became an actor, then you became a governor, then you became a bodybuilder, step by step, right? So regardless of whether you have consecutive or concurrent, it's going to be a journey, and the journey is mapped out. This thing is, people do research and find out like what is the common way how people journey their work. So stage one is inclusion. Many people, when they are starting, when they're exploring, the challenge they have at hand is how do we include, how do we get included, how do we access the table. So let's say you want to be a freelancer. The challenge you have is going to be, how do I access the table where gigs are? If you want to be a freelancer in technology, how do I access the gatekeepers that be in the technology space? So inclusion is usually the first step of every journey. And us who are in ecosystem building for work and career and business, we normally try to make this thing very easy. So when you see like the Freelancers Lounge community, when you see these networking sessions, when you see all these things, we are trying to make it easy for you to be included. So the people you would never have met, you can meet them at an event, in a WhatsApp group. But what we are trying to do is to solve the problem of what? Of inclusion, because it can be hard. And most people who say, I don't have a job, their problem is that they can't take the first step. They can't get the bus to take them, which is the inclusion. And you can, you believe me, you can be on this stage for 10 years and you're trying to look for how to be included. Some people, because they don't know the principles, I'm told, I don't know, I might speak things which might put me in trouble. So let me withhold the words. But there is an organization in Uganda where people pay millions of shillings to get jobs. And when people get jobs in that organization, they try to get their money back. You know, it's because they have tried all ways of being included, and the only way they can be included is by buying a job, which is their style, but it's very dangerous. But there are techniques and styles and ways of being included. And some of them, if I get time, I will talk about them. But every person's work begins with inclusion. Then from inclusion, you transition. Now, this is also transition, right? But this is transition in the work. You're not moving from maybe full-time to freelancing. You are just transitioning from one level to another. Then you transition to influence. So when you have influence, you will know. Influence, it means you are some kind of gatekeeper. You are the one who calls the shots. So on inclusion, you are the intern, you are the applicant, you are the one who is searching. But on influence, you are the one who is giving internship. You are the one who is recruiting. You are the one who is making decisions, who is setting goals. And it comes with time. It comes with time. So here we normally have people in management roles and stuff like that. Then impact. So this one is getting access to the table. This one is being able to make decisions and people listen, and your wishes, their command. And then impact is you going beyond the four walls of an office and changing the world. So this one here is also a deliberate decision. Now, this is where most people find problems. So you have influence in the corporate world, you have a good paycheck, everyone reports to you, but then you feel in your heart that you can't yield the impact that you want to, because impact, it can be done in the four walls, but impact according to what you want. Remember, impact is fixed to an agenda. So you find the things you want, you can't do them, you can't impact the world the way you want. So you have to make a decision. So all these forms of transition, you have to be ready for all of them, and you have to know the tactics that you use at every stage. Now, there is Kanye West and Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, when he had just started his company, he was a nobody. No one knew him. They were making Apple One. He made a phone call to a gentleman called Isaac. The name is disturbing me. Walter Isaacson, something like that. And he told him, "I want you to write a book about me." And the gentleman laughed, because that gentleman had written a book about Albert Einstein and so many other great people. He had written about their work. So Steve Jobs comes and tells him, "I want you to write a story about me." And the gentleman laughed, because he had nothing to show for it. He didn't even have a product. So a few years later, Steve Jobs is on his deathbed. He's about to die. Of course, now he's the richest man on earth. He has the biggest tech company. He has changed the world. Yeah, he's called Isaac Walterson. And when Steve Jobs called him this time around, he went running. He went running because he had seen what Steve had done. So he found him on his deathbed, and Steve told him, "Start writing. Even if people speak bad things about me, you write them. I'm not going to stop you from writing anything." And Steve started telling his story on that deathbed. So many nice things. Some of them, if you read them, you will cry. Me, I've read Steve Jobs' bio. So he starts bubbling and talking his work from when it started. But at the same time, he told Isaac to go and speak to every person that Steve had worked with. So where Steve had his internship, where he volunteered, where they ate apples from, the person who gave him his first job. You see those Mike Makula. There are so many people in there. The guys who were writing games, Wozniak. He went to all these people to write about his story, and these guys, and this entire story is not just about the personality of the guy, but about his work. So they will tell you why the iPhone and the Apple MacBooks are so clean inside, because his father would do the same in the garage, in their chairs. So they would start talking about Steve's work. And when you read, and the same thing, Kanye West, when he was transitioning from being a music producer to being a rapper, there's a way these guys know when they find their purpose, when they transition from the normal, because all these guys spoke this at their transition stage. So when Kanye West decided to be a rapper and transition from being a music producer, he called some guy, I've forgotten his name, and he told him, "Start recording me, because I'm going to be a superstar. I'm going to be the greatest rapper in the world. Start capturing my story." The story is now on Netflix. So the guy would move with his camera everywhere they go, because for some reason this guy knew that he's writing a story, that his work is going to change the world as we know it. And Yeah, and then the movie came out, the story came out, and people are watching it on what? On Netflix. Steve Jobs' book is available in audio and whatever. But to me, when I was seeing all these things, I was understanding that these guys found their purpose and they knew that their work is no longer just a job, but it's a story and it's work which is beyond them, and they have to hand it over to the next generation to continue it. So for them, it ceased from being work, but it became a story. It became a book, it became a movie, it became a documentary, and they knew it before they started. You can imagine. So the moment you start looking at your work as a story, you are going to be amazed. And I don't know how to change your mind about this, but you should start looking at your work as a story. Now, if it is a story, you don't want to watch a movie where we are in the introduction, then the whole movie is in introduction. It's not going to work because story has introduction, then you keep on moving up, then you have a climax and conclusion, then you have what we call prime. Even soccer players, they know at a certain age, this is going to be my prime. This is how I started, debut. They have all these words to tell somebody's story. He had his debut on such and such a day when he was in his prime. He's now in whatever. So they are trying to see somebody's story. They don't see it as a career or work. They see it as a story that you are telling. So maybe my question to you is, do you see your work as a story, and or you just see it as survival for the fittest, getting some quick money, and there's money on your bank account, whether you rip off people, whether you kill people, whether you break your back, it doesn't matter so long as there's money. And it's amazing, these guys have the money. The guys who look at their work as a story are the ones who have the money. Then the survivors, um, who are, I don't know even what to call their work. It's not even a music video, but it's what? It's not even a short story. It's conflicted. It's confusion. Um, they tend not to make it, and I don't believe it's a coincidence that most of the successful people, their work is like a story. You can act a movie, a true, those things of based on a true story. So the question is, can we have your work and we say this is based on a true story, and people watch it on the screen and they are happy? Me, my favorite movie this year is Bob Marley, One Love. It's because I'd read his story, and I was very moved. So when I watched it on the screen, I even enjoyed even more. And this is a gentleman who died at the age of 38 or 36. He was still very young, but he changed the world. So these guys who tend to look at their work as a story, there's a way they change. So if you look at it as a story, believe me, transition is not going to be hard for you, because you need to know now every book has a chapter, every movie has a scene. When it's time to change, you will change. You will say, now I'm no longer just a producer, I'm a rapper. I'm not just a rapper, I'm now a whatever. I'm not working on iPhone, I'm now working on iPod. We've changed the world, let's now go to TV. Let's create I music, whatever. So transition becomes very easy when you start looking at your work as a story. Let me move on. I've overdelayed on this one, but it's very, very important. Yeah, so the question is, what is your story as far as your work is concerned? And I assure you, if you have no transition, no change, you have no story. You will have maybe a scene in a story, in somebody's story, and they act a scene, and then you're in an office on a desk and you contributed to Apple, You'll be in those stories like a paragraph in Steve Jobs' story. Yeah, so this is how it's very easy. It's the technology behind CVs and all these things, only that for us, we've messed them up. We no longer know what the word CV means. We've weaponized everything. Every tool is a weapon now. So these were artistic tools that people could use to express themselves. The CV is an expression of self. Um, Gardner said, career is an expression of personality. You should be enjoying what you are doing. So if someone looked at your CV, does it tell a story, or it's just the hustle is real? Huh? Um, so it doesn't have to be complicated, but you can embed it in what you do. You make sure you look at all your work as a story, and transitioning is going to be easy because if I'm a volunteer and I want to be an intern, there are things I need to do. You transition because it's a movie. You are telling a story, and if you become an intern forever, there's a problem. So you say, now I'm an employee, but I want to have influence. I want to have impact. You transition, you go independent, something like that. And stories are very easy to find your work. So, for example, there's work I am doing. I'm going to be doing this coming month, and I'm sure 100% that my story was one of the things that stood out because I've been told even. So there's work I'm going to be doing with people with disabilities. So because I grew up with a mother who was impaired, she had a hearing impairment. So I grew up with a person with disabilities. And of course, it's hard. You have all this trauma and psychological torture and all those things. But when you embrace it, you find that it's being added in your story. It's a scene in the movie. So when I saw the work they wanted, they were looking for an inclusive trainer, someone who can train people with disabilities, entrepreneurship and stuff like that. To me, I didn't even do much. I just shared the few things I know, but from a personal story. And there's a way the connection happened. Even when I met my fellow trainers today, I felt like there was deep connection. I shared it with one person on my left, and they connected with it. So when you have a very good story, there is a way it brings work to you. So most of the times, if people relate with your story, they will give you work because they want to be part of that story. It's subconscious. No one does it consciously. People don't know. But there's a way their inner person tells them, connect to this story, connect to this form, add a scene to this movie, something like that. So your CV or whatever, all those things are stories. And then finally, this is the final thing. So we've looked at all these things. Now I want to talk about mapping. So work is also a map. I think if you remember primary, a picture is something that is seen from a side, and then a map is something that is seen from above. Let me hope that is it. So I love this one. The founder and CEO of Innovation Village, on his LinkedIn, he puts the word dot connector. And that's what mapping is. Mapping is the ability to connect dots. So one of the reasons why you have to transition is because you are going to meet dots. There's when you know that I have 4 dots, but the best dot to connect with is the next one so that it can lead me to the next one. That's what we call mapping. But there are people who haven't learned how to map or how to connect dots, and it's a big problem. I don't know. I don't want to use, I read Steve Jobs a lot, and he's the only one who is coming in my head, but let me use local examples. So, let's say I'm Bobby Wine and I'm playing music and I've gained influence, and I feel I can have more impact, but I can't have that impact as a musician. I can only have it maybe as a political leader. So then the best transition, the next dot that I need to connect with is from being a musical ghetto president to being an MP of Chadon. So you connect that dot. Then when you're an MP, you've yielded influence, but you want to have more influence and more impact. I don't like using political examples, but this is the one I can use now. The next dot is being what? President, because you want more impact and more influence. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I have Innovation Village, but it's only for technologists. How can I bring in creatives and artists? The next dot will be, let's connect motive. But entrepreneurs, jobs are being created, but we need more jobs. How can we create more jobs? Let's create Freelancers Lounge. So that ability to connect dots is very beautiful, and that's what we call mapping, work mapping. And the moment you see the next dot, you will not even know that you are transitioning. For you, your eyes are going to be on the next dot and the next one. And as you move towards that dot, you find you've already transitioned. So you can reflect and you see in the future, and you can predict. People who, if there's someone on the call who knows AI, that's how ChatGPT works. So you can predict the next dot, and you know that most likely my next dot is to be in a leadership role. Because if I get another job somewhere doing the same thing, I'm going to die. So you switch completely and you become an executive, and you say, if a role is not a management role or an executive role, I am not going to take it on. If a role does not, I'm not going to take it on, because you're trying to connect dots. But remember, the dots are being connected based on all the things we have looked at, especially this one of inclusion, influence, and impact. Why would someone move from MP to president? It's because they want more influence and more impact. Why would someone create more of the innovation villages? Because they want more impact and more influence. So mapping is something that is very important as far as transitioning is concerned. Dot connecting, the ability to connect dots. And sometimes it comes from experience, from exposure, from what you are learning, from where you are working, the people you are meeting. You can attend a session and then you meet maybe people with disability, and you're like, man, I didn't know this, but this is a whole other area. You connect that dot. And that's why in business, we are having something called corporate entrepreneurship, because it helps with connecting dots. It helps you to map out. So that's why you have Google this, Google that, Google this, Google that, Google this. They know if we create Google search and people start searching a lot, we can create a Google Pixel so that you search from the Google Pixel. But let's create a Chromebook. Let's create Google Maps. But in the maps, you need weather. Let's create Google Weather. So the more you keep on connecting dots, the more you expand as a company. So even as an individual, it's the same thing. That's why I am a big believer in forward slash. And when you're transitioning, you can say, I am this forward slash this as you transition. I think that is a big nugget. Let me explain it very well for you guys. So I can be maybe a photographer who is transitioning into videography, but my whole heart and passion is in videography, and people know me for photography. So on my profile, I will put photography / videography. It's called the forward slash. And I'm trying to connect these two dots. So when I put the forward slash, my former clients will keep on coming to me for photography, but I will also be positioning myself for videography. So everywhere on your socials, on your whatever, you put photographer forward slash videographer. Then the more you gain skill and exposure and networks in videography, and the more you tell people who come to you for photography about video, the more you keep on moving slowly by slowly until when you either phase out the photography or hand it over to another person, and then you concentrate on what? On videography. That's a very practical way of connecting dots. And I've done this personally on many occasions. So that you don't cause confusion in your transition, you use the forward slash. So you say, I am this forward slash this, then you keep on transitioning. When the time is right and you feel the positioning is perfect, you remove the photography, and that's for videography. Or another way is to find a common denominator, and you say maybe I'm a visual artist, so that you can open the scope. But all that is mapping and connecting dots. And so I've already talked about planning for change. Really, I was going ahead of myself. Um, most of the things I was using are tools that people use to plan for change. But the last thing I'm going to talk about, and then we can open the floor, talk, and then close. I want us to close early today. Is the aspect of finance. It's quite important because have you ever wondered why workers, most of the times, they are rewarded with money? There's a reason why they are rewarded with money. It's because money can be converted into anything that the worker wants. So instead of giving you shoes, transport, food, what, we just give you money, then you sort yourself. And labor requires you to be equipped with resources so that you are okay. So in some cases, when you are having a evolution or revolution and you are changing, there's where the only secret is going to be on resources. You have to plan resources. So for example, me, when I quit my job, I spent 6 months without working. Not because I didn't have what to do. If I wanted to work even the next morning, I would. But I wanted to first sort myself, do some reflection, thinking, studying. Some of the things I'm teaching you, that's where I learned them from. Connect dots, align, know what I'm going to do. Avoid doing the same thing, expecting different results. So now imagine if you haven't planned your resources, or you have no resources whatsoever. You can't have that luxury like me of closing yourself in a house for 6 months while transitioning. You can't have a 6 month transition period. And it's not always the case, but if it's the case, you have to be very careful in that instance and plan prior. It's very easy. There's something called runway, runway, runway. You can write it down or you Google it. So runway simply is how long, and that's how even we measure wealth. How long can you survive? How much resources do you have? That how long can the resources you have take you without you working or getting more resources? That's what we call runway. Companies use it. So the way you measure runway, you know how much money do I spend in a month? How much money do I spend in a year? And then that's going to be your runway. So if you spend 2 million shillings a month and you want to have a transition period of 6 months, it means you need runway of 12 million. So if you have that money on the account, you can start now studying, researching, thinking, working on yourself, and then you transition what? Smoothly. Though that's not always the case, and you don't have to do that. But runway is one of the ways through which people plan for transition. My network is showing here that it's breaking. Let me hope you are hearing me. I was about to restart it. So I think that is it for me today. And if you have any question, you ask, we answer it, then we sign out. Any questions? Mic check. Are there any questions? No question whatsoever. Everything is perfect and clear. Okay, if there are no questions, thank you so much for coming. See you tomorrow for the grand finale.